Hello, beautiful people. I'm Nikki, and this is a night of horror where I talk horror movies and sometimes other genres and TV shows. In this video, I will be discussing the new Hulu original horror movie, Mr. Crocket, about a mother who embarks on a perilous quest to rescue her son from a demonic children's show host who is kidnapping kids. Kind of a reverse Freddy Krueger. For my one-line letterbox review, I put a great horror villain stuck in a cliched and predictable movie. And that about sums it up. But let's get into this movie, starting with the positives. Let's start on a positive note with all the things that I liked regarding this movie. First of all, the movie actually starts off pretty strong. We have a good opening sequence where we see a kid watching the Mr. Crocket VHS tape, and he is called over for dinner, and his stepdad is abusive. The mom just like leaves the room as the stepdad is force feeding the kid, forcing him to finish his plate, clean his plate, even though he's full, he doesn't want anymore. Mr. Crocket makes his appearance and we get a pretty good kill. The effects and kills are a highlight of this movie. I thought the effects were really well done. When making a horror movie, no matter how small the budget, put the budget into the effects. They did, and it paid off. I liked how the kid pauses the VHS tape and it's on pause in the background, but you can see like little movement from the tape. And also the way Mr. Crocket pops up from the like kitchen door, tilts his head, like has this eerie smile. I love the stepdad being tortured and his stomach being sliced open while the kid is just sitting there eating cotton candy and smiling. Like, I feel like this was a good opening sequence that made me feel like, okay, what else does this movie have to give us? The stepdad was basically force feeding the kid, so Mr. Crocket kills him by force feeding the stepdad a disgusting plate of food. I actually thought this was so entertaining and really solid, and I was really excited to see where the movie would go from here. Unfortunately, we didn't go up from here. I am disappointed also that the movie didn't hit home with the themes of like the horrors of black childhood and like that old school ridiculous dumbass black parenting, like forcing your child to finish their entire plate even though they're full, forcing your child to eat food they don't want to eat. The lady at the funeral who's like, that boy got a mouth on him because the kid says he's bored, and she's like, what does that even mean? And then she goes into, you know, that old school black parenting, giving the advice to our lead Summer. When Mr. Crocket tells the stepdad, I guess force feeding doesn't feel so good, I was hyped, like, okay, we're really addressing some cool and appropriate like themes in this movie. And I was like, okay, Mr. Director Writer, I know your childhood fantasy, let's get into it. But unfortunately, we don't really get into it. We don't go anywhere with it. The shining star, continuing with the positives of this movie, is the actor who plays Mr. Crocket. I love the Mr. Crocket character. First of all, I'm hyped for a black horror villain because we literally don't ever get them. Everyone talks about Candyman or Blackula. Well, people don't really talk about Blackula, but y'all should. But baby, that was like the 90s and the we need like black horror villains, and Mr. Crocket feels like he can be as iconic and timeless as Candyman. Now, when it comes to the lore and world of Mr. Crocket, I don't like when they have the awkward scene of Mr. Crocket explaining like his childhood and origin to Summer. Like, what were we doing with that? But the world of Mr. Crocket is intriguing. His puppets are amazing. All of the Mr. Crocket songs are amazing. The outfit, the look. I love the demeanor of Mr. Crocket, where he's like pleasant and nice but sinister, like an evil Mr. Rogers. But truly Mr. Crocket was giving me like an evil Bill Cosby vibes. And yeah, I know. But you know how like 100 years ago, the Bill Cosby brand was like family friendly, wholesome. He would have that smile and that laugh. That's what it felt like we were channeling with Mr. Crocket, with a mix of like the Reading Rainbow guy. Mr. Crocket definitely feels like Freddy Krueger, the wholesome Bill Cosby image from back in the day. So the whole lore of like Mr. Crocket saving the kids, and, you know, wanting to save them from abusive parents and killing the parents, taking the kids to live on forever in his Mr. Crocket world. That is amazing. Like, all of that is great ideas. Now, outside of the actor playing Mr. Crocket, I felt like the acting was pretty mediocre. And for one, I just feel like the acting wasn't good from a lot of people. But I also wish the other actors knew that they were in a campy horror movie. Like Mr. Crocket knew I feel like Mr. Crocket, that actor, understood the assignment and understood the assignment more than the filmmaker. Because like the movie has a serious tone, but I feel like it should have went straight for the campy horror. And the crazy person, like, warning you horror trope. We're going to get into all the horror tropes, the checklist, but I actually like that one when she pops up and she's like singing the Mr. Crocket song. I love the fruits and veggies song at the end. Everything with Mr. Crocket is so good. Mr. Crocket and his puppets and his whole show. His whole world is definitely, like I said, the shining star. I was the most engaged and entertained when Mr. Crocket was on the screen, and when he wasn't on the screen, there is a scene at the very end where Summer is like, cherry bottom, born and raised, bitch. Like, terrible, cringy. But then there's a moment where Mr. Crocket says playtime isn't over. Mr. Crocket did well with his cheesy one-liner, like, cheese it up, ham it up, let's make this really let's make this really campy. I felt like the other actor didn't understand that. She said her line way too serious, and it just came off really cringe and terrible. But let's get into Summer and Major. Summer is our lead character. She's a single mom. Her husband just died. Major is her young son, I think about 8 years old. And he's a little demonic child, first of all, okay? I was like, is this the Omen or is this Mr. Crocket? Because that kid was, you look. We have a little collage of Major running wild and Summer listening to like parenting cassette tapes that say, instead of spanking your child, let your child spank you. And she's having a really hard time with him. And suddenly a mailbox appears in her yard with the Mr. Crocket VHS tape. And I was very much feeling like, who the hell does not question a mailbox suddenly appearing in your yard? But I did really like the visual of Mr. Crocket watching the kids and their parents like through a TV, like watching them when you're watching a VHS. I kind of like that. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, that's his look into our world is also like a tape, the way we're looking into his world with the VHS. And I feel like that was a cool way we could have played with that. But I feel like another big hindrance is they didn't make the main kid, Major, a sympathetic enough character. Like I said, he was demonic. He was Damien from The Omen. Like, he was a little sociopath. So I felt like Summer and Major's relationship and the characters, the way we did Major, was another missed opportunity to explore like parenting, the mistakes of parenting, and how screwed up Mr. Crockett's view is when he thinks he's saving these kids. Like, we could have really played with that. We have a moment where Major was watching the VHS, but his mom feels like he's watching it too much, takes it away from him. She wakes up in the middle of the night and the Mr. Crocket VHS is playing. She goes to turn the TV off and all this stuff. Well, we have a moment where the TV falls because like the TV kept turning on, but the TV falls. Mr. Crocket gets up. He's like, hello there, with glass like sticking out of his face. But the thing that really got me is Summer went to get a bat. Who grabs a bat when a nigga climbs out the TV? Baby, somebody just climbed out the TV. So Mr. Crocket is able to take Major. He doesn't kill the mom. And I don't really get a rhyme or reason for why he kills some parents and not the others. I mean, obviously you can say he only kills the real abusive ones. But I thought the whole point of him taking kids is he's taking kids that are the victims of abuse. Like the opening scene, he only kills the stepdad. He doesn't kill the mom, which presumably that's because the stepdad is the one that was abusive, not the mom. But then when we get to Major, like I said, the whole thing is Mr. Crocket takes abused kids. She's the only parent. She's apparently the one that's the one you need to save Major from. So why not kill her? I never really understood the rhyme or reason for not killing Summer. And the cops come and they're just like, oh, another runaway. She's a junkie mom telling this story about a man coming out of the TV. And she's passing out, Summer is passing out missing flyers when she comes across this house where cops are there. And the neighbor is telling Summer, when she's like, what happened? The story about the dad being on drugs and he was killed. And now the daughter is missing. But what gets Summer is the neighbor says that they ain't even take nothing. You know, they just busted out the TV. And that's when somehow, just from this, and her little experience, Summer connects dots and she says he's killing parents and taking more kids. The movie also for me hits just another negative is the tropes checklist. I feel like we went into writing a horror movie thinking we have a checklist of all the notes and beats the horror story should hit and all the tropes we need to hit. The whistle. Saving us in the end, like having the whistle and then having it come back in the end, kind of like how we had Stephanie in Evil Dead Rise. The horror trope of the dream sequence. Summer sees her dead husband and he's like, you probably drove Major away. You never let him have any fun, which of course it was just a dream. It was Mr. Crocket. The horror trope of the library research. Like literally, we had a checklist just checking off every single solitary horror trope we could think of. And we do the library research. We see these news articles of children's TV show hosts killed in shootout with cops. That Crocket attempted to kidnap a kid who eventually was returned to the parents after he was killed. And we do have a pretty cool scene. Like I said, every scene with Mr. Crocket is amazing. Where there's a TV in the library. Mr. Crocket pops up in the TV like, stop looking for us, Summer, unless you want to join your husband in hell. We got a cool scene. Like when I was just talking about, let's go back a little bit. When I was talking about the neighbor telling Summer what happened. Well, that scene, we had this little white girl. Her dad is a drug addict. She was watching the Mr. Crocket tape. Her TV went out. He was screaming at the little girl. Like, this was actually really sad. And this is why I'm just like, there was so much we could have explored with like parenting and the abuse of abused kids and Mr. Crocket and what he thinks he's doing. But we also see that same mailbox that popped up in front of Summer's house, in front of the little girl's house. And of course, Mr. Crocket pops up and the dad has a gun, but Mr. Crocket makes the gun shoot bubbles. He ends up being able to control the dad and makes the dad put the gun in his own mouth. And when he pulls the trigger, a bubble comes out. The bubble spreads the man's mouth and like his head explodes. Great kills. Great kills. And of course we get another trope. We have the stranger who pops up saying his name is Eddie Briggs. He's the parent of a missing girl. He approaches Summer. He says, I saw your flyers. I believe you. I know all about Mr. Crocket. I believe it's real. We know Mr. Crocket went to take a boy from his abusive parents when he was killed. We can pretty much put two and two together. Like I literally said, I bet Eddie is the kidnapped kid, not a parent of a missing child. It was obvious as hell. And then once we get into Mr. Crockett's world and it's revealed that he's Anthony and he's been waiting his whole life trying to find Mr. Crocket. Duh, Mr. Crocket don't want you because you're an adult now. He only wants kids, so Anthony is killed. Duh. Narratively, the movie is a mess. Narratively, the movie is just... It's crazy because the core idea of Mr. Crocket I really like, but the story, the writing is so unimaginative. It's very, like I said, just a bunch of horror cliches and tropes. We have the mom from the beginning. We have something very odd where apparently she has all these videos, TVs set up, and she like gets possessed through the video and can tap into Crockett's mind. How, Sway? Who, what, when, where, how? So this is how she goes into Crockett's mind, and we know the house and the kid he's going after. So we pop up and she's killed, but she pops up in the end, reunited with her son, not dead. But Crocket has this magic marker that he opens the door to let the kid in. So Summer and the other guy, Anthony, are able to go in there to get into Crocket's world. And Crocket wants Major to kill his mom the way that Crocket killed his dad. Major doesn't kill his mom, and it breaks the trance of the other kids. And we get a collage and snaps of like Summer and Major, and they're happy and taking out the trash and getting along. And I'm like, okay, so Major just suddenly don't have no behavior problems. You suddenly don't have no issues with parenting now. And she like killed Mr. Crocket. Like, y'all, it's just all that third act was terrible. But we end up seeing Summer at a school meeting. And apparently Major is having issues with authority and teachers, and that the kids are talking about his new like dad, who the lady in school thinks is someone that Summer is dating. She's like, there's talking fair around the schoolyard about Major's new father figure. The kids are scared that he will snatch them up through the TVs. And we see Major drawing a picture of Mr. Crocket and calling him dad. Mr. Crocket for me started strong, or strong enough. It started good. It started well. For me, Mr. Crocket started well, but drags, and it's filled with too many cliche horror tropes. It's predictable. The third act was really lackluster. I really wanted more, especially from like the showdown with Summer and Mr. Crocket and how he's taken out. And I also feel like the characters are really thin. Honestly, I didn't care about anybody. Everybody could have died for all I care. Like, there was no one I was rooting for. There was no one I identified with. There was no real character development. I feel like we needed better fleshed out story and better fleshed out characters. Baby, the villain can't be the most likable character. But I ended up giving Mr. Crocket a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Ultimately, I feel like it was a great idea and concept with not the best execution. The script feels childish, no pun intended. Not every director can write. I feel like we should have enlisted better writers. And also, I'm over the 80s, 90s nostalgia. They have milked it to death. So this movie being set in the 90s really didn't do anything for me. On the positives, I absolutely am here for black horror that is not centered on racism or black trauma or people in the hood and all the other bull. I feel like we should have, for me, this had the potential to be like a fun, campy 90s version of Sinister. I absolutely, though, feel like a franchise can be created around the Mr. Crocket character. Maybe we can do like how Ouija was a terrible movie, and then Mike Flanagan did the sequel, Ouija Origin of Evil, and that movie was amazing. Like, hopefully we can come through with an amazing sequel for Mr. Crocket. But yo, shout out to that actor. Mr. Crocket was one of the best performances of the year, period. But let me know in the comments, how did you feel about Mr. Crocket? Did you agree or disagree with my take on the movie? I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.